Let's face it, on this podcast, we like anti-heroes. Those tragic characters who break the mold. Those who may not be the best role model, but know how to win our hearts. One of them is Jorge Alberto González Varillas, universally known as Mágico González.
González, the greatest Salvadorian footballer of all time.
He had this magic, obviously. I mean, the nickname doesn't come from nowhere.
El Mágico was one of the most impudent geniuses that soccer history has ever seen. In full flight, there was not a defender in the world who could touch him. They tried. Those who saw him play live say that he could have been as great as Maradona himself.
As González comes away now for Salvador. Now González. Oh, lovely play by...
There are athletes who astound us with their competitiveness, their sheer will to win. But Mágico González was made of different stuff. All he wanted to do was have fun. And that's maybe why he has become a bit of a cult hero.
You talk about players who are trying shit, who are doing fun things, who during the run of play would pop out with a trick to beat the defender.
This is John Arnold, whose Get CONCACAF newsletter covers Central American soccer.
Mágico was a guy who was going to make something happen, was going to pull a trick out of his bag, and had a whole lot of tricks in his bag.
A kind of hedonist, he savored life on and off the field, in the bars and nightclubs of his adoptive city, Cádiz. Maradona and Mágico actually shared the field at the José Rico Pérez Stadium in Alicante during the 1982 World Cup.
And now González, inside to Maradona.
And in a little-known story, in the summer of 1984, they spent a summer touring the United States together for Barcelona, laughing and scoring at will in friendlies. Today we're going to talk about the diverging paths of these two kindred spirits. One of them went on to become Diego Armando Maradona. If you've seen a soccer game before, you know who he is. He won league titles, the World Cup, and has a claim to being the best player in the history of the sport. The other, well, El Mágico played a large part of his career in modest Cádiz. He never made the millions his talent could have commanded. And he never got close to a World Cup again after that first meeting with Maradona in Alicante. Today, two paths diverge, and we're going to look at the one that gets lost in the woods, El Mágico González. I'm Nando Vila, and this is the best soccer podcast in the world.
Vamos, Diego, lo estaban agarrando. Canigia, la ley de la ventaja. Canigia, ahora o nunca. El triunfo, Canigia, gol!
Michael Owen, he's got Scholes with him, but it's still Owen. Oh, what a goal! Yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo, yes! Oh, yes!
The goal all of Italy wanted to see. The man they wanted in the Italian team.
Oh, that's brilliant! Oh, that's wonderful! That is a magnificent goal!
¡Oh, Brasil! ¡Pelé!
El Salvador is not one of the traditional giants of soccer.
El Salvador, back then, it really wasn't a football powerhouse.
This is Daniel Edwards, a Buenos Aires-based journalist covering Latin American soccer for Goal and others. Up to that point, El Salvador was mostly notable for participating in the soccer war against Honduras, a brief and bloody conflict in 1969 that erupted after riots during a World Cup qualifying match. After two tense games, El Salvador barely managed to qualify for the World Cup in Mexico in 1970, their first World Cup.
This unique El Salvador team whose qualifying campaign sparked off a war against Honduras.
It was over quickly. El Salvador didn't score a single goal in the group stage.
And the tiny Republic of El Salvador now are surely well and truly beaten.
They didn't even qualify again until 1982. Enter El Mágico. The qualifying game against regional heavyweights Mexico would help determine who took the trip to Spain and who stayed home. The score is 0-0, the Mexican team having already hit the inside of the post. González collects the ball in his own half. Back then, he was still known as Mago, or the Wizard. He's off, slicing through the entire Mexico defense, the defenders melting away. A stutter, then a burst of pace, and he's into the box. A snap left-footed shot. It pings around in the box, off his own teammate, and falls kindly. There's nothing for the El Salvador forward to do but nudge the ball into the net, and El Salvador into the World Cup. Well, eventually. Mexico had to draw their next 3 games, allowing El Salvador to qualify by a single point. This is Mágico González in a nutshell. Searing ability and chaos.
Essentially, they wouldn't have made the World Cup without him. It's hard to contextualize some of El Salvador's historical achievements. I think El Salvador making the World Cup was enormously important, but it went so poorly when they actually got there that I wonder if there's a bit of hesitance to mention that they made it, that there was this sort of crowning achievement.
In the summer of 1982, Spain hosted the most important soccer event on the planet. This was the World Cup of the mythical Naranjito, the mascot of the tournament, of the failure of La Roja, of the embarrassing collusion between Germany and Austria, of the match stopped because of a Kuwaiti sheik, of the traumatic fall of Socrates and Zico's Brazil, and of the resurrection of Italy thanks to Paolo Rossi. And it was also the setting where 2 of the world's brightest talents met for the first time, Argentina versus El Salvador in the group stage. Diego Armando Maradona versus Mágico. It was the first World Cup for both. Diego was already a known commodity.
Maradona was required at 21 to produce the sort of fireworks to justify his status as the world's finest and most expensive footballer.
Stadium lights across Spain shone on the young Boca Junior player who would undoubtedly be the star of the World Cup. Quite the opposite for Mágico. They didn't broadcast the Salvadorian First Division widely then, or now for that matter. Few knew much about tiny El Salvador. Due to budget issues, El Salvador only brought 20 players as a cost-saving measure. The day before their opening game against Hungary, their allocated balls were stolen and they couldn't train. They scored El Salvador's first ever World Cup goal in that game, naturally from a winding Mágico run down the left. But El Salvador set several other records that day. It remains the greatest loss in World Cup history, 10-1. It included the fastest hat trick in World Cup history and the first and only hat trick scored by a substitute. The scorekeeper had to improvise to display the double-digit scoreline. The players mutinied after the game, stripping decision-making from the coach and eking out narrow defensive losses in the next 2 games to salvage their pride. 1-0 to Belgium.
But that was to prove to be the only goal. For El Salvador, that spelled a moral victory.
And 2-0 to Argentina. However, in only 3 matches on the group stage, Mágico put his talent on display. After that World Cup, Barça officially presented Maradona with the contract that they had previously agreed to. Meanwhile, European offers poured in for Mágico to leave Club Deportivo FAS. In the end, the team that managed to win him over and lure his tropical personality was Cádiz.
There's a story that he could have gone to Atletico Madrid, who were a bigger club. For whatever reason, that didn't work out, and he went to Cádiz, where, as I said, he became very popular. Why he chose him, I couldn't say.
Cádiz is a modest Andalusian club that at the time was in the 2nd division. It is one of the most beautiful cities in Spain, a paradise, population 100,000, with spectacular beaches, exquisite food, and warm people. More about what happened next after the break. Mágico fell in love with the city, and a loan was agreed, with the option for a full transfer at the end of the season. Mágico helped the team earn promotion to the First Division, and the club wanted to make his signing permanent. To sign the corresponding paperwork, they decided to meet one spring afternoon at the Plaza Hotel in Madrid. Mágico, a representative of FAS from El Salvador, the president of Cádiz, Manuel Irigoyen, and the vice president, Miguel Iglesias, who tells this story. Everything was going perfectly according to plan, except something was missing. Something important.
The player's requisite signature was missing, so we began the hunt for the monster.
This is Miguel Iglesias talking. What could Mágico be doing to miss something as important as signing his contract?
I went searching for him until I finally found him. The man was occupied. I saw him with 2 women in his room at the Plaza Hotel, and he was not going to leap for anything, even his soccer career.
When Mágico didn't show up, Miguel Iglesias went to look for him in his room and caught him red-handed with 2 women. I can confirm that they were not playing cards. You will hear, as this podcast progresses, that Mágico and hotel rooms become quite the theme. At the same time, Maradona's Barça finished the league in 4th position, 6 points behind the champion, Javier Clemente's Bilbao. Once the league was over, Barça still had to play the Copa del Rey final against Real Madrid, with the possibility of salvaging the season. But 4 days from the final, mythical German international Paul Breitner organized a farewell match at the Munich Olympic Stadium and invited Maradona and Bernd Schuster. This caused a conflict. Both of them wanted to attend, even if it involved a risk of injury just days before the final. In the end, players such as Kempes, Zico Jr., and Beckenbauer played in the testimonial, but not Maradona or Schuster. Barça locked away Maradona's passport to keep him from leaving. This chapter was the culmination of an increasingly tense relationship between President Josep Luis Núñez and the Argentinian star who had signed only 6 months prior. Barça ended up winning the cup final 2-1. Meanwhile, 700 miles away across the peninsula, a Salvadoran magician was delighting his new fans with flicks and tricks and preparing for his entry to the Spanish soccer elite.
He was a very kind of traditional enganche, as it's called in Latin America, in Argentina, a guy who liked to have the ball at his feet, wasn't going to run a whole lot, but if he had the ball, it was almost impossible to take it off him. He had a whole bag of tricks. He could do the flip-flap, he had the step over, the bicicleta, which basically just bamboozling his marker, and he had a good strike as well. Just a guy who liked to be in the area, liked to have the ball at his feet and could really make the ball sing.
An accomplished season in La Liga at an individual level for Mágico, with 14 goals and numerous memorable performances, but the season wasn't quite over. At the same time, the Spanish national team had to start preparing for the upcoming Euros that summer. And on top of that, Barça agreed to a tour in the United States, with Maradona as the main draw. Competing on so many fronts, the puzzle of how to stretch the roster created a need to find players in creative ways. And amid all that frenzy, rumors began to emerge that Maradona was leaving Barça. But first came the American tour. Barça would travel to the U.S. to face the New York Cosmos, Udinese, and Fluminense.
On New York Air, we fly to the Big Apple with New York Flair.
Simultaneously, the club had to contest the League Cup in Spain with 4 key players away on the Spanish national team. So only 5 members of the first team were called up for the tour: a goalkeeper, a defender, and the 3 suspended from the Copa final, including Maradona. They pulled 5 more from the affiliate teams. That made it up to 10. Maradona then included Osvaldo Dalla Buona on the roster to better showcase his close friend. Juan José Estella, who belonged to Mallorca, also joined the tour. That made 12, but it still wasn't enough. They needed more reinforcements. Back then, it was somewhat common to pull from the roster of rival Spanish teams while on tour. And so Barça decided on Mario Usillos, an Argentine forward from Murcia, and on Jorge Alberto González Varillas, alias Mágico. After the initial greeting at the airport, and with the assistant coach Rogelio Poncini in command, the Barça expedition departed for New York. Mágico was going to wear the famed blue and red jersey, and he was going to share the field with the great Diego Armando Maradona, this time on the same team. Everyone knew that Maradona would make a huge splash, but to his teammates' surprise, Mágico also had a large fan base in the United States. Fame that continues to this day.
You have this figure who has so much worldwide respect among soccer purists who say things like, this guy could have been or was as good as Maradona. Certainly the maximum all-time reference for a Salvadoran player, a player that young players want to aspire to be like. You go to an El Salvador game, you're going to see some replica jerseys with his name on the back.
After some training sessions, the tour debut approached. It would be a giant stadium against the New York Cosmos, and it would feature the new partners in crime, Mágico on the left and Maradona as a false nine. Both, of course, with total freedom to mix it up for the public to enjoy.
Barcelona will kick it off. The front line of Close, Maradona, and Gonzalez. There goes Close, number 9. Put inside to Gonzalez. Mágico Gonzalez lays it back. Chip back to Gonzalez inside the box.
Even so, Barça's makeshift defense was fragile, and they ended up losing 5-3. Also, as well documented by the press, they complained a lot about the local referee, especially Maradona. The following day, during a press appearance, Maradona revived the rumors of his departure, with Italy as his imminent destination. After the defeat against the Cosmos, the only match left was against the Brazilian club Fluminense. Could that be Diego's last match for Barça? More about what happened next after the break. Meanwhile, the other great star on the tour took everything in stride. In fact, he practically did not leave his room. His deep-rooted relationship with sleep was something that everyone in Cádiz knew about.
Se quedaba dormido en su casa y había que ir a buscarlo.
He'd fall asleep at home and we had to go look for him. Sometimes he didn't get up and didn't come to training. But since he lived next to the stadium, we would go look for him. He was a normal person like any other. The thing is, he was a sleepyhead. And since he was the best, well...
David Vidal, who was on the coaching staff of Cádiz at the time, was the one who suffered the most because it often fell to him to track down Mágico and drag him to training.
Yo el que más. Muchas.
I was the one who got sent looking for him the most. Many times. Many. In 9 years. Imagine how many times I went. When I was the assistant coach, they always sent me. David, go see if Mágico is there and bring him back. And I'd bring him.
Of course, the day came when Mágico went too far. In the middle of the tour with Barça, a few hours before the next match against Fluminense, all of the staff was staying in the same hotel. Suddenly, the hotel alarm sounds. No one knows if it's a drill, a fire, or a bad joke. But the point is that everyone evacuates the building. The players do a head count, and someone is missing.
They said, a fire, and the only thing missing was Mágico. They went to look for him in the room and he was there with a girl. He hadn't realized that the alarm had sounded. It was a very funny thing. Mágico liked to have a good time.
This is Maradona's friend, Osvaldo Dalla Buona. As had already happened when signing the Cádiz contract, Mágico González was caught again in a hotel room with a woman, this time a few hours before playing Fluminense. 56 minutes into the match, Mágico González scored his first and only goal in a Barça jersey. The move started, could it be any other way, with a pass from his partner, Diego Armando Maradona.
Maradona for Close. Back to Diego Maradona. A lead for Mágico González in the area. Shot goal!
Es increíble cómo se entiende, como si fuera...
It's amazing how they understand each other. That connection was born naturally. They were two skilled players who played by heart. When Diego raised his head, Mágico already knew where he had to distance himself, and he put the ball there. It was a great assist from Diego and a great goal for Mágico.
The match finished 2-2, and Barça ended up winning on penalties.
Third place game by a score of 7-6, winning 5-4.
With the tour complete, Barça returned home on June 5th, 1984. So now what? Was it possible that Barça could consider signing Mágico after the bond with Maradona he showcased on the American tour? Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way. In the end, his tag as a quote-unquote special player dissuaded Barça from signing him. The hotel incident only corroborated what the club already thought about his discipline levels. But even if Barça had signed Mágico, he would not have lined up with Maradona because a few days after returning from the United States, Maradona's departure to Napoli became official. Maradona then had his best years in Naples. He won the 1986 World Cup with Argentina. But what happened to our beloved Mágico? He returned to Cádiz after the summer tour with Barça, and in light of his complete inability to comply with even a modicum of order of discipline, he decided to hire a personal assistant. But he still couldn't fall in line. His father figure, President Manuel Irigoyen, had enough. Cádiz sent him on loan to Valladolid in mid-season. He played 9 games and scored 2 goals. But Mágico wanted to return to Cádiz at all costs. The club were amenable, but there was no place for him. All the foreign roster slots were filled, so he had to take a gap year. But he returned in 1986-87, and Mágico began his second and definitive career phase.
The reason he went back for his second spell was that he had previously gone to Valladolid, the northern part of Spain, which didn't have as pleasant a climate as Cádiz, it seems. There's a local saying that says it's 9 months of hell and 3 months of winter in Valladolid. And Mágico didn't enjoy the winter at all. Made it one winter and then quickly got back to Cádiz, where he's a little bit more comfortable. He had the Mediterranean sunshine.
This was and is Mágico, a free spirit, a crazy rogue, someone who always dodged discipline.
Could he have been even better than he was? Could he have played for the greatest club teams of the era? Could he have taken a very bad El Salvador national team, with all respect, even higher than where he took them? So, yeah, that's the reputation, is that the guy enjoyed life, wasn't really that concerned about the games that weekend.
He could have accomplished more if he had wanted to. He could have played for PSG or Barcelona. He could have made double, triple the money. But that just wouldn't have been him. He was always true to who he was. Outside of his native El Salvador, in Cádiz, he found his place in the world. The perfect enclave where he was not judged and could give free rein to his hedonistic personality.
It's sports. We talk about athletes that we love, and of course you love the athlete that's at the top of their game, who eats the right things, who works out every day, who gets 10 hours of sleep. But ultimately, if an athlete turns up looking like he's had a hell of a night, potentially cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he still kicks your ass, that guy has your respect.
After Cádiz, Mágico returned home to El Salvador, where he played for his old club FAS until he was 42. The government renamed the national stadium after him. He's commemorated by street art and even has a hot dog stand named after him. He summed up his career to a local paper saying, quote, "I recognize that I'm not a saint and that not even my mother can take away my urge to party. I know I'm a bad professional, but I don't like thinking of football as a job. If I did, I wouldn't be me. I only play to enjoy myself." He still plays amateur soccer. The Best Soccer Podcast in the World is a production of Exile Content Studios in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura podcast network and is hosted by me, Nando Vila. Produced by Ana Isabel Octavio and Zach Lee Rigg. Written by Zach Lee Rigg and Fermin Suarez. Production assistance by Stella Emmett. Our executive producers are Isaac Lee, Rose Reed, and myself, Nando Vila. Our executive producers at iHeart are Giselle Bances and Arlene Santana. Sound design by Hugo Mendoza. Our awesome theme song is by Lou J. Special thanks to all the voices that participated in this episode: Daniel Edwards, John Arnold, Miguel Iglesias, David Vidal, and Osvaldo Dalla Buona. Listen to the Best Soccer Podcast in the World on the iHeartRadio app, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your favorite podcast.